Let's do it that way. Good afternoon. My name is Ces Butner, and I have the honor to serve as this year's president of Rotary Club of Oakland. Founded in 1908, the Rotary Club of Oakland is the third oldest Rotary Club of some 35,000 Rotary clubs throughout the world. We are a community of 300 men and women from all walks of Oakland civic, commercial, and community life committed to the Rotary motto of service above self. I'd like to welcome you to the 5,320th club meeting. For over 111 years, we have welcomed Rotarians and guests from around the world to our club meetings. We continue to do so virtually, so if you're visiting Rotarian or if you're a guest of a Rotarian, please let us know by typing your name and the name of your club into the chat box located at the center bottom of the screen, as indicated on the red arrow with the slide you're viewing now. By doing so, we will recognize you, be able to recognize you later in this meeting. Also, we recommend that all participants view this Zoom meeting by clicking the speaker view button located in the right-hand corner of the screen. And if you have comments throughout the meeting or questions for the speaker, please use the chat button at the bottom of the screen for that as well. And now for the thought for the day, Rotarian Fred Mackay.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Thought of the day. Well, 2020 has been a rough year for most, if not all of us. Fires, floods, storms, political unrest, joblessness, and homelessness, and that's just in our country. There's so much more going on abroad. And of course, there's the COVID pandemic that has impacted the world all the same. We have all had our weakness exposed by these elements. That weakness is the fact that we are all human. There has been no greater evidence in my lifetime than what one person or group of people does directly affects another than this pandemic. Regardless of race, age, religion, or political belief, the string that ties us is more prominent than ever. It's been made clear that before we are a race, an age, a religion, or a political figure, we are human. So let's be human. Let's strengthen our ties and turn that string that ties us together into a rope or chain even. If a virus can seemingly infect us through our day-to-day connections and activities, we can use those same connections to educate, empower, encourage, and invigorate. We can collectively care for and love for each other as one race, one human race, making humanity our strength. But unfortunately, for now, we'll have to do that from a distance. I thought of the day.
Thank you, Fred, for setting the tone with the meeting with that reflective thought. Because we want to remain grounded and focused, we begin our meetings by jointly reciting our vision, which is, shown on the screen, together we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. As you may have noticed, well, we didn't quite have it in the pre-meeting slides, but I want to show it now. Why don't you show the thermometer button? We have a thermometer for TRF participation showing us at 72%. That's a tremendous progress toward the 100% participation that my President's Challenge seeks. That's a Rotary Foundation, and we're doing quite well with it. But there's 70 or 80 or so of Rotarians who have yet to pledge. So you'll be receiving a call from some of the members of the fundraising committee in the next week. So don't be shy, donate today, and get us to that 100% participation where we all can share in the gift of giving and give to the Rotary Foundation. At last week's meeting, we enjoyed Chef Nikki Shaw, who reminded us of the importance of nutrition, healthy eating, and self-care in COVID-19 year. Nikki came to us as part of our very successful Feed the Hungry program, led by our Community Services Chair, David Kittner, who will give us an update today on that program. As you remember, after the George Floyd murder this summer, we issued a statement on racism and social equity. And I committed to having a series of conversations on the topic throughout the year. Today, we have a speaker to do just that. So sit back and enjoy another in our great Civic Thursday meetings where you can catch a great speaker and get involved with Rotary where service above self exists. So let's get started with Community Service Chair David Kittner, updating us on the Feed the Hungry. David.
Thank you very much, President Ces. For anybody who was not here last week, we had our Feed the Hungry. And if you would like it to make a contribution to the Feed the Hungry, please put it in the chat. If you want to ring the bell once, it's $100. If you want to ring the bell twice, it's $200. So just put in there as a chat and we'll pick you up. Well, last week we had our pledges, and after we did a bunch of higher mathematics, it came out that we had over $20,000 in pledges, which since I've been doing this is shatters the record we had before. So I want to congratulate everybody in the club, thank them very much. It's a tremendous achievement. And this year we also picked up a match again, MN Builders, Steve Nichols matched up to $20,000. So we have $40,000 going out to Feed the Hungry. Now, when we had that result, MN Builders got so excited, they said, oh my goodness, we would like to raise our match by another $5,000.
Oh.
So we've got another $5,000 out there that if anybody else wants to match, we're going to ring the bell now and see if we can't collect a little money. So President Ces, would you ring the bell twice for Karen Friedman? Would you ring the bell twice for Jason Weiselman? Jenny Hunsberger, ring the bell. Okay, Steve, Iris Brody Lopez, ring the bell. Ruth rang the bell again. Ruth Strupp rang the bell again. Sean Callum. Sean Marks. Fred Mackay. David Kirsten. Diane Schaefer. Oh, super. Anybody else? CJ, was that you, CJ? That's my 2 minutes, Sis. Okay, we'll pick some more at the end. And at the end, we'll let you know who else might have done it, Sis.
Thank you so much, David. That's a fantastic program for Feed the Hungry. And we do some 9 organizations that we distribute the money to make sure we feed the hungry once a year. We do this every year. Now, past District Governor Ed Jelen, do we have any visiting Rotarians or guests?
Yes, we do, President Ces. We have some wonderful guests with us today. First with us today is the immediate past president of the Rotary Club of San Leandro. So I'd like to welcome Diane Dorn with us. Welcome, Diane. Nice to have you with us. All the way from Belarus, we have our good friend Mary Jiang's daughter with us, Jennifer Jiang. So welcome, Jennifer. Nice to have you with us. Here to support one of our speakers today, Courtney Ruby, is Dina Shoup. Welcome, Dina. And last but certainly not least, number 99, one of our great past presidents, Iris Brody Lopez, visiting us from Arizona. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Ed, and welcome to all the guests. At our last meeting, past President David Stein presented the slate for nominating committee for the Board of Elections for the 3-year term beginning 2021 to 2022 year, and we're president-elect for the year 2022 to 2023. This week, past President Sean Marks will handle the annual meeting and official election. Sean Marks. Hello.
Unmute, Sean.
Unmute, Sean.
Unmute.
Thank you, President Ces. I'm retired past President Sean Marks, and I have the honor of conducting this year's vote. But before I do that, some disturbing news. Some of you may have heard that Dudley Thompson is refusing to leave office next year. Now, fortunately, I've recruited David Stein to head our legal team. Unfortunately, Jack McAvoy has recruited the esteemed Lorna Padilla Marcus because there is talk of a vote recount. That all being said, I am
I
pleased,
have friends in Texas. I have friends in Texas.
I am pleased to present our slate for this year's election. For the position of president for 2022 through 2023, Mary Jiang. And for board of directors, 21 through 24, Kimberly Cohn, Will Hobbs, Mike Mowry, and Renia Webb. Do I hear a motion?
I so
Yes, so
moved.
moved.
Can I have a second?
Seconded.
Those in favor of this slate, please put yes in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, we got tons of yeses. Any no's? Boy, that's all yeses. Congratulations, candidates. And you're going to kick butt in your roles. Thank you.
I see 82 people giving a standing ovation right now.
Very good. That's what we miss because we don't have our normal in-person meetings. And this COVID year, we have to try to do it a little differently. But congratulations
Dennis,
to
can we just ask everyone to unmute and make a ruckus? Can we just all
Yeah,
make a
everybody
ruckus?
unmute for 1 minute.
Ruckus, ruckus, ruckus.
Yay!
Ruckus,
All right. We got them all.
Calvin and Hobbes.
So as part of the annual meeting, my president report is as follows. I would like to thank everybody for giving me the honor to serve as a president for the 2021 year. And as we close this year and begin the final 6 months of my presidency, I think it's worthwhile to review where we stand and how the year is going. If you'll remember in my inaugural meeting, I set some ambitious goals for the year, not the least of which was my emphasis on the homeless situation in our community. More on that later. Every year is challenging, but this year, faced with COVID-19 pandemic ravaging and disrupting our community, it has been extremely challenging. But true to the spirit of Rotary, I'm pleased to report that we have faced those challenges and in many ways come through even stronger this year. In my initial meeting, my first goal was to bring excitement to our weekly meetings by changing the format slightly and adding high-profile speakers. The fact that we were relegated to Zoom-only meetings, that is, no in-person meetings, presented challenges to that goal. But thanks to David Stein and the Speakers Committee, we have done just that. Our lineup this year has been nothing short of stellar, with the high-profile speakers like Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Danny Wan from the Port of Oakland, an all-star panel that featured San Francisco Fed Chairman Mary Daly, Rotary International President-elect for 2022-2023, and I'm not talking about Mary John, but Jennifer Jones, the first woman president of Rotary International, and a particularly topical guest from ACLU lead journal, courtesy of Rotarian Gary Flaxman, that spoke about the awful policy of separating kids from their families at the border. Yes, we had great speakers. And thanks to Rotarian Isaac Koss-Reed, chair of our communications team, we created the Civic Thursdays brand for our meetings and got them prominently aired on several social media platforms. So I'd like to say this goal is being met. We also set out to make our theme, service above self, not just a theme, but live through our committees and have produced some pretty big time results despite COVID. Two of our most active committees, Kinder Prep and Community Service, have been hard at work and have already allocated and granted about 50% of their budgeted funds, with Kinder Prep committee having done great things for transitional kindergarten teachers at OUSD by providing virtual learning kits for 37 classrooms, along with gift cards for their teachers. And they are working on more with virtual books. We collaborated with First Five clubs to do a simultaneous service day distributing hygiene kits to homeless encampments throughout our respective cities. Here in Oakland, we partnered with the Salvation Army to pack and deliver those kits. Yours truly participated in distribution and came out more committed than ever to our emphasis on homeless this year. I'm particularly proud of our fundraising efforts this far. Just in the last month, we have taken our Rotary Foundation efforts this year to new heights. With the campaign not yet finished, the President's Challenge in hand, our co-chairs Joe Garacco and Leanne Alameda have guided us toward record fundraising dollars. Almost, before we finish, it'll be about $150,000. And more importantly, recorded record participation. We're currently at 72%. And as we inch closer and closer to the 100% participation, a truly remarkable achievement when we traditionally had participation levels of 25 to 30%. We are on our way to changing the culture of the club. And as if it wasn't enough, just last week, the community service chair, David Kenner, raised a record $20,000 for Feed the Hungry that matched Steve Nichols and his company, M&M Billers, giving us some $40,000 to Feed the Hungry program through some 9 different organizations. We're going to have a successful ORE campaign and with its own President's Challenge. And as I promised, I have a special committee to raise $3 million over the next 3 years added to the corpus of our endowment. So I'm thinking we're doing great on the fundraising phase. So no report on status can fail to mention membership. Membership remains a high priority. While we have recruited some 50 new members, much work remains to get to the 50 goal I set back in July. It is the one area that I must admit that we have not performed as we wished. So I got a challenge for you all to help me reach the goal in the second half of the year and bring a new member in. I need 35 of you to bring in a new member and share the Rotary service above self with others. Please do that for me for next year. Finally, our Housing Insecurity Task Force is hard at work on our homeless project and will unveil all their work in our initial meeting in 2021, which will feature our mayor, Libby Schaff, and she has some ideas on how Rotary can impact on an unhoused community. Stay tuned for the second half of Cesar's presidency. It's going to be exciting. This concludes my mid-year report for the Rotary Club of Oakland, moving forward despite COVID, the third oldest club in the Rotary world. Thank you. Now, to get on with our meeting, to move out of the annual meeting section, to kick off the holiday spirit, we have a trio of presentations indicating our diversity of ways we may celebrate and enjoy this holiday season. First, we have Rotarian Ces Butner. Carrie.
Thank you, President Seth, and hi, everybody. I gotta cue up my music. So, jam out a little bit. So I'm sure it says no surprise to those of you who know me that as a musician, to me, the Christmas season definitely means music. So whether it's at a midnight mass, celebrating the birth of Jesus, in a manger singing Silent Night, or trimming the tree, listening to Nat King Cole, singing chestnuts, roasting over an open fire, music has been part of our Christmas traditions for centuries. Normally, my season right now is filled with carolers, concerts, and children singing together throughout our community. And this year, we're finding that instead in our living rooms and via YouTube and live streams. For me, though, it's meant a lot more time to reflect on other symbols, like my favorite, my Christmas tree. My tree is at the center of what Christmas means to me, because every ornament is a memory of a person that I love, a trip that's taken, or an experience that was shared. My Christmas tree is a tree of life. It's my life. And in it, I see my family, the crafts my mom passed down to us, trips taken with my husband, and the gifts passed to me by those whose love I still feel, even though they're no longer here. And I see my childhood. And I have to say, I especially see it in this. I don't know if you can tell, but this was my ornament from 1975, the very first ornament that I gave to my parents in kindergarten. Right now, though, I also see not only that gift, but I see the enormous amount of work and love that my teacher and all teachers put into making sure that everyone in our class had something special to give to our parents. And to me, that's really what Christmas means. It's that reflection and anticipation, celebration and nostalgia, gratitude, and giving to others. I hope that for all of you, this season will bring us peace, quiet joy, health, and healing. So have a Merry Christmas and have a wonderful holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Michael Brook, I think it's going to give us Club Treasurer Michael Brook, I should say. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, President Sess. I'm just standing up to display my Hanukkah t-shirt with the various spellings of Hanukkah. You can use a CH, you can use an H. You can't go wrong if you use the Hebrew. That always works. Thanks for the opportunity to share some information about Hanukkah, the 8-day holiday, Jewish holiday that's being celebrated this year, starting tonight and going to December 18th. Hanukkah commemorates a historical event that took place around 165 BC or BCE. At that time, Syria ruled over Judea, which is the country now known as Israel. And the Syrian king attempted to impose the Greek religion on Judea. After the Jews resisted, the Syrian army took action to enforce the Greek religious practices throughout the country. A group of Jews who became known as the Maccabees, now Jack, pay attention, I said Maccabees, not Maccaboys, formed an army and fought a guerrilla-type war against the Syrians, eventually defeating them. 3 years after the Syrians destroyed Jerusalem, the Maccabees rededicated the temple. They were only able to locate enough oil for the temple lamp to burn one day, but miraculously, the light burned for 8 days. And since that time, Jewish families celebrate Hanukkah each year for 8 days. The Hanukkah menorah is lit at sunset each night, and each night an additional candle is added so that on the 8th night, all 8 candles plus the helper candle here in the middle are burning. It's traditional to eat fried foods on Hanukkah because of the significance of oil to the holiday. The most common dish is latkes, which are potato pancakes, very good. Hanukkah not only recalls the miracle of the Maccabees' victory over the Syrians and the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days, but celebrates one of the first struggles for religious freedom in world history. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you, Michael. Now we have Karstuki World Community Service Chair, Co-Chair, Renea Webb.
Greetings and happy holidays, fellow Rotarians and guests. You all may be surprised to learn that Kwanzaa is younger than some of you. It came to life just in 1966 in response to the tragic LA Watts riots. Kwanzaa was created to soothe the pains of injustice and oppression, bringing African-American communities together to celebrate our rich cultural traditions and principles, while committing to live every day with pride and purpose. Please enjoy this short video about Kwanzaa. There's no sound.
State University, Long Beach. Karenga was inspired to find new ways to connect African Americans after the violent Watts riots in 1965. He began researching various African harvest celebrations. The holiday's name even comes from a Swahili phrase that translates to first fruits. According to the official Kwanzaa website, the colors of the holiday are black, red, and green. Black for the people, red for their struggle, and green for the future and hope that comes from their struggle. While each family celebrates Kwanzaa differently, gatherings usually consist of dancing, storytelling, lighting candles, and eating a large meal. Another commonality for Kwanzaa, the number 7. The holiday takes place over 7 days, celebrates 7 principles, and has 7 primary symbols. Kwanzaa is also spelled with 7 letters. Each day of Kwanzaa represents one guiding principle. These values are unity, self-determination, collective work and responsibility, cooperative economics, purpose, creativity, and faith. The goal is to incorporate these ideas into your daily routine beyond the holiday. But for each day of Kwanzaa, you also light a candle on the Kinara to represent and reflect on a principle. Because Kwanzaa is a cultural celebration, you can participate in the festival even if you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, or other religious holidays. Kwanzaa is meant to be a time for reflection and for sharing stories, customs, and traditions. Kwanzaa ends on January 1st. Do you celebrate Kwanzaa? Let us know on social media. For Pix 11 News, I'm Summer Delaney.
Thank you, Renea. I thank you, all of you, for getting our holiday spirit started off in the right directions with all different kinds and shows of the diverse nature of our club. I really appreciate it. Rotarian Wendy Williams, I believe you have a presentation from Rotary, Devontae Brooks. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. There he is. Devontae, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Devontae Brooks. I'm serving as the president of Oakland Community Rotary Act, and I am a former Hope Mentee recipient of scholarship. I want to introduce the other members of the group who are not here, but Diana Garcia, as you may know, is vice president. Ivy Chen is our appointed treasurer. I also have Claudia Nevi as our secretary. And as of the pandemic and our first year of kind of rolling things out, we are doing a lot more art-centered work and other type of events to bring awareness to COVID safety, to dealing with homelessness, things of that nature. And we're always looking to reach out and get a little more assistance, advice. So we truly appreciate any advice from Rotarians. And I'd like to give a very big thank you to Winter Williams, to Gary Flaxman, Mark Rosen, and Catherine Coleman. And I will actually be linking one of our videos that we did from the Brookfield cleanup. I will drop in the chat if you don't mind, and you're welcome to check it out after the meeting or whenever you get a chance. And that is our little bit of an update. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devontae, for that update on it. And everybody check out the YouTube that Devontae has dropped in the chat box as well. Phil Bennett, I think you have an announcement.
I do, President Ces. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to introduce a new member of our Rotary family. On the 14th of November, my wife and hero, Tricia, gave birth to a little girl. And this is her.
Oh,
little,
wonderful.
Her name is Isabel Zawadi Bennett. And her middle name, Zawadi, just like Kwanzaa is a Swahili word. Zawadi means gift. And so in the spirit of giving and the spirit of Kwanzaa, I'd like to ring the bell for little Izzy.
All right. Anybody that would like to, I'd like to ring the bell for that newest Rotarian. Any other people that would like to please place it in the chat? That would be, it's so wonderful to see. And congratulations, Phil. Let's see, Winter Williams, I think you got to introduce our guest, our honored guest. Speaker.
Yes, thank you. I'm proud to present Tinisch Hollins and Courtney Ruby. Tinisch Hollins is the Associate Director of Californians for Safety and Justice and State Director of Crime Survivors of Safety and Justice. She's also a crime survivor and native of San Francisco who has been deeply engaged in the Bay Area's social justice movement as a community organizer, policy advocate, and systems navigator for nearly 2 decades. She has worked passionately to bring the voices of impacted communities to the center of public policy and decision-making, and has advocated tirelessly for those voices to guide decisions, priorities, and resources. Courtney Ruby, as you know, this is in her 3rd term as Oakland City Auditor. As you may know, she has a reputation for producing hard-hitting audits and holding City Hall accountable. She's a graduate of American University, certified public accountant, and certified fraud examiner who has dedicated her life to the service of others, creating organizational change and ensuring organizations manage their financial resources effectively. She's also your fellow Rotarian, a resident of Oakland, and most importantly, Robert and Giovanni's mom. To preface this conversation, I'd like to say our focus today is on the challenges we're facing when trying to implement changes within our policing system, not the specific changes that need to be made, as that's another topic altogether, and we only have about 20 minutes. Tinisch and Courtney have been invited because they have had the opportunity to observe our policing systems from 2 vantage points, both of which place a high priority on accountability and effectiveness. In Tinisch's case, it's from the vantage point of crime survivors and community organizers, though she has systems experience as well. In Courtney's case, she has very recently overseen an in-depth audit of Oakland's Police Commission, a body which was established to advocate for change, but has faced challenges of its own in the process. Hopefully this is a helpful overview as we begin. I'm going to drop links into the chat from Tinisch's organization and Courtney's audit. So you have that to review when you have time, and we'll have 5 to 10 minutes at the end to field questions, which you can place in the chat. Tinisch, welcome. If it's okay, I'd like to start with you.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with all of you Rotarians and to be part of this discussion with Courtney.
Wonderful. I was wondering, crime survivors' voices have been pivotal in the creation of public safety policies. What are you hearing and learning from your survivor network about their current public safety priorities as they pertain to our policing system?
Yes, it's true. The voices of crime victims have definitely been pivotal in shaping our nation's public safety priorities, and especially around policy. Our organization is around 8 years old, and we have a national network of crime victims. Here in California, we have a little over 12,000 crime survivors as part of our survivor network. Many of those folks are Black and brown folks from marginalized communities who don't often get the identity or the empathy that's reserved for crime victims. You know, we've done a lot of work in having conversations with folks who have been impacted by crime. And normally, or traditionally rather, traditionally the voices of crime victims are usually pitted against criminal justice reform. They're usually, you know, traditional victims advocates' voices have been, you know, over the decades, the loudest about tough on crime policies. But we've really noticed a shift in that discussion over the past couple of years. And I think that particularly this year, you know, with such a global response to the racial injustice, racialized policing strategies, you know, unfortunately, the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others, there's really been a movement to get to the core of the issue and expand our conversation around public safety. And so when we're talking to our survivors throughout the state and throughout the country, what we're hearing is that their priorities are not necessarily for tougher sentencing or longer sentencing. It's about how do we eradicate crime altogether? How do we deal with the root? And what we hear as the root are trauma, poverty, unaddressed needs in our community, and many of the things that I believe Rotarians and other folks who are interested in bettering our communities also see as a priority: homelessness, addiction, mental health. These are huge priorities that, unfortunately, criminal justice spending has made it a challenge to really put the infrastructures in place that folks want to see and know need to be in place to keep communities safe. And so when we're asking what are the priorities, and when we're hearing folks' stories and testimonies, what we hear them saying is we want our investments to go to things that actually prevent crime from happening in the first place, that are responsive to our immediate needs as survivors, making sure that folks get access to relocation, mental health services, medical services, they get support with dealing with navigating the systems, and that on the long term, that the investments are going to things that actually do keep communities safer and give people more access to support. So that's what we're hearing, and that's a big conversation in California, but it's also a big conversation nationally.
Thank you. Do you have an example of a situation where funds were allocated as it pertains to the policing system? Funds were allocated but not executed in a way that resulted in the impact that the survivors were hoping for?
That's a great question. I would answer it this way. We have had over 5 decades of investment into the criminal legal system. And I think that, for survivors, safety has always been a priority, but access to services has always been right at the top. One example here in California, our victims' compensation funds are funded by restitution fines and fees. This is the first year that California, through advocacy from crime victims and others who are, doing service in the community, were able to secure general fund dollars to support crime victims. And the reason why I'm kind of naming this is that, there's a belief that when we're investing into the criminal justice system or even into policing strategies, that there is a direct benefit to crime victims. And when you look into the policies, you find that, unfortunately, there's not much written out that's a direct benefit to crime victims at all. And so this year, we really made efforts to have conversations about what are the direct benefits to crime victims. A couple of years ago, we ran Prop 47 and Prop 57. Those were big criminal justice realignment bills. And what they did was they moved millions of dollars directly to trauma recovery centers. So for the past 6 or 7 years, those investments that would have been going to detaining folks longer and to other areas of the criminal justice system have been moved directly to programs that support crime victims. That's what we want to see more of. That's what survivors have said. But unfortunately, I can't give you a concrete example of where dollars were supposed to be allocated, because unfortunately, crime victims get very, 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 very little from the overall criminal justice spending, and especially for dollars that are going to policing.
Thank you. Are there situations where efforts made in the policing system could have prevented the crimes or reduce, the situations where the victims are experiencing, where prevention would have been impactful?
I think overall, the intent is there. It's the intent of public safety to prevent crime from happening overall. And I do think that, in the best ways that they can, law enforcement has tried to be responsive to it. But the fact of the matter is that law enforcement will always be limited in how much support they can offer around prevention, how much support they can actually offer to crime victims, because each situation is so complex, the needs are so great, and they're long-term. They're not just in the moment. And I think when we talk to, police officers and law enforcement, many of them are very clear about how they don't have enough resources, how they don't have enough bandwidth. And for many of them, admitting that it's not quite their role, that they have a role to respond to the needs of the community, but around some of the needs of crime survivors and crime victims, the criminal legal system is just not well equipped. And then when you talk to survivors about their experiences in coming in contact with law enforcement, or even with processing their specific incidents where they've been harmed, unfortunately, due to a lot of issues, systemic racism, lack of engagement with the community, lack of trust, many survivors end up re-traumatized, re-triggered, re-victimized through their interactions with law enforcement because the capacity just isn't there. And there are so many other big issues. So I think that, there are a lot of intentions to prevent and to support survivors, but I think we're at a place right now where we can really reimagine and revision what that looks like and what role, not just, police, but, all of the criminal justice system, what role they play in that, how they interact with survivors, and whether or not the resources are actually meeting the need.
Thank you. That's the perfect transition into some of the work that Courtney's done. Courtney, especially as you mentioned community engagement, because our police commission was established to address some of this. Courtney, can you share how community engagement impacts your work, and perhaps use the recent police commission audits you conducted and their findings and recommendations as an example? Oh, goodness.
Oh, there we go. All right.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you, Winter. And thank you, all my fellow Rotarians. It's such an honor to be with you today and to be with you, Tinisch. I'm honored to share this forum with you and the great work that you're doing, and share with you how community impacts our audits, because there's so many ways that the community really makes a difference in the work that I do. So in relation to the police commission audit that we issued in June, I'm going to set the stage. And if some of you call back or recall to 2016, inside Oakland City Hall, we had a sex scandal going on with a minor, and OPD officers and other officers were involved throughout the region. So at this same time, citizens are fed up and they've had enough, and they are actually writing legislation, Measure LL, to create an independent police oversight organization and an investigative agency to assist with that work. So when it goes on the ballot, 83% of the residents vote for it. It is so clear that Oakland has no trust at this point in OPD to correct itself. So they're really looking for that citizen oversight to, turn the curve here, to make effective constitutional policing a reality, accountable policing a reality in the city of Oakland. And in that measure, the residents want the city auditor to go in within 2 years of the measure being passed and have the auditor evaluate whether the police commission is effective in implementing the mandates of the city charter and the Oakland Municipal Code. Because 1 year after it is enacted, then Oakland also puts forth enabling legislation and modifies the Oakland Municipal Code. So our auditors go in to look at the compliance of that, whether the commission has met the requirements as mandated by Measure LL. So on June 1st, we issue the audit in relation to the police commission and the community police review agency. So I have been in City Hall a long time. I have never issued an audit during riots in my life until that day. So we have a nation that is grieving intense anger at the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And we are now going to issue an audit that is critical of the Citizens Oversight Commission. And this goes back to my role as the elected city auditor, or anyone who would be in this role as the independent auditor, that it is our role to evaluate critically, independently, what is working and what is not working in the city of Oakland. So our audit found, we had 5 findings, 41 recommendations that identified that the commission in the time that it had been seated had only done work on 2 policies, had not moved forward on 13 key requirements and another 23 requirements. These included evaluating the police chief, providing the police chief with the criteria to know what the police chief was going to be evaluated on, having semi-annual reports from the city attorney, having annual reports from the police chief, putting the inspector general forward. So these were critical measures evaluating Oakland's police budget. And in addition to that, the commission was also responsible for overseeing the agency, the investigative arm, and ensuring that at a time when the agency was in flux because they changed from a community police board to now a community police review agency, that they had direction in their cases and the dismissal and closure of cases. So in these findings, we also found that they were deficient in their investigative processes. So as we're putting this forth, now we issue it. And even though the commission has been involved all along, which is common in any audit that we issue, there is pushback on the recommendations and the implementation of those recommendations. So while I'm elected, the city auditor doesn't have enforcement. And in order for me to be effective, I have to ensure that when we find critical deficiencies, that they're corrected. So this is where you come into play. So for those who know my past history, we've always had a strong communication strategy. I can't do this unless you stand beside me. So immediately we start communicating out to the public that we are getting pushback from the police commission in relation to the recommendations. The report process always includes the report and then the response from the auditee. And then if there needs to be another response from me to correct deficiencies in the response from the auditee, there is that. So you can find the full audit. I know that Winter's providing you that link. So in order for us to ensure that we have an effective police commission, because this is one of the most powerful police commissions in the country. And we have a history of OPD failing miserably. So much is at stake in this case. And when I say failing miserably, I want to say, again, when we talk about the scandals, the lack of accountability, because I think that from a public servant standpoint, I think that there are a lot of officers doing amazing work, but we knew that the department was shrouded in these scandals. So we needed to make sure that our recommendations were taken seriously. And so I reached out to those of you who are involved in my newsletters. And if you're not involved, I recommend you, and we'll send out a link on how to sign up to the newsletters. So we instantly put out calls for action, letting you know that the police commission was pushing back on the recommendations, that we needed you to call the police commission, call the mayor, go to meetings, and have your voice be heard. It is with that power and that pressure of ensuring that we will get the accountability to make sure then that we're doing, this is why we want to do this great work, is to have the impact. If we issue audits and they just get shelved, then we can't drive forth the change that you've elected me to create. So, as in this process, it really is about delivering the most impactful changes to the city and driving accountability home. So with that, I'll wrap it up and kick it back to you, Winter.
Thank you so much. I was hoping that we could have one question from both of your perspectives, and then we'll open to some of the Q&A, and I'll mute. I apologize for the dogs in the background. I happen to have a dog business, so sorry about that. So for both of you, what would you say are some of the greatest challenges facing facilitating change within our current policing systems? And what can community members do that you haven't mentioned already, perhaps, or you can elaborate? What can we do to assist with addressing those challenges?
Sorry there. I can go first. I'm actually looking at some of the questions that were in the chat, and I think that was a great question that you just asked, Winter. So one of the biggest challenges is that the system is inherently flawed and people don't trust it. It's already failed the people. And so how do you move forward in a conversation where folks feel like not only are they being heard, or that their suggestions or their recommendations or what they're fighting for is being centered in what the next steps are going to be? How do you trust a system that has already failed you and is inherently flawed? And I think that is the biggest hurdle. And I think the truth of the matter is you cannot get people to trust a system that's already failed them. You have an opportunity now. We have an opportunity now to start designing the responses that we need in our community. We have the resources to be able to do that. And I think it's less of a conversation about whether or not there is a law enforcement model or a law enforcement entity or something within this current system that works that we can fix. It's time for us to really go back and be honest about what the foundation is of a lot of the systems that we currently have are. And in our country, we know that these systems that we have are inherently flawed because they are built, they have inherent racism in them. And the ways that we see problems and the ways that we see solutions are very limited to who's right or wrong, good or bad, who's guilty and innocent. And I understand that there's a big part of that in the criminal legal system is identifying who's responsible and how do we repair the harm. But that is too limiting. It's too limiting for where we are right now, where we need to go in order to really heal our communities and create safety. And so I think that's the biggest challenge, is that we are trying to fix a system that cannot be fixed. I think that we have immediate needs that we have to address that we can't ignore. And that quite frankly, there's an expectation that people who have been harmed, that have had their victimization ignored, that have been in many ways held responsible and been identified as part of the problem in our communities, then come into a process and cooperate and speak humbly and be patient and trust that somehow in this process, the outcome is going to lead to their safety and that their needs being met. We can't ignore that. This is not our reality. And it's not going to be a quick fix or easy solution. We've got to continue to work through that and really take an opportunity to imagine what a new system could look like. This is the time for us to be able to do it.
Agreed. Thank you. Courtney.
Yes, absolutely agree. That we're in a transformational time. And I think the key phrases that stand out for me right now is, trust and systems, so let's talk about that, because here's a case where the residents want reform. 83% want reform. And you need to stand up a commission inside City Hall. Well, City Hall doesn't have a process to stand up a commission. So now you are not assisting the commissioners because you're not providing them the resources to stand up the commission. So right there, you have to look at, do we have a system where we're really giving them the tools to begin with, right? And then you have the measure and all the requirements that are required, because you want that accountability, and we want accountability quickly because the past failings of the system. And I think when we go into an audit, we're always we go to the systems. That's where we start. We say, what is the system? What's the criteria? And we evaluate from that standpoint. If the system is inherently broken and we're not looking at the root cause, then you can talk about what's not working, but you're not addressing the fact that it is a different day in America. And the beauty of the police commission is they are calling forth those voices, and they are hearing people's concerns, and they are giving voices to the victims to be heard, right? But the audit comes back and says, that's great, but you have to have a system so that you can provide that information in, so that now we create trust. Now we know that we're using that information, that data, to change the system. So you have, both pieces go together. And as I had the pleasure of speaking to Tinisch yesterday, prior to this, and she had shared with me that she was a systems person before this, that's a marriage that I think the more that we can bring balance to that piece, I think that we will move the needle in the way that we're seeking. And it takes all of us. You can't step out, you can't check out, you have to be committed. When I send an email and I say it's a call to action, I need you to pick up the phone or I need you to email that day. Because it is when you call and you are upset that you get the change. And so, that is the greatest thing you can do, is make your voice heard.
Okay, do we have Susie, are you online? Did you take all the questions in the chat?
I'm happy to help with that, Seth.
All right, go ahead. Ask the rest of the questions in Winter.
Thank you.
Sorry,
so
I'm
much.
stepping on your toes.
No worries.
Let me get out of the way.
No worries. No. Stephen Lowe asked, and I think it's great right behind what Courtney was saying. Is there a perfect law enforcement entity or system that's been designed that our policymakers can move towards gradually through legislation, as opposed to the usual raft of ordinances that come after the barn door has been blown off its hinges?
I think you're asking, it's a challenge to say, can we move, right? It's what I just talked about. You have a system, you've got to figure out how do you shift that system. And even the reforms that have been talked about in some of the cities that have moved to putting more money towards social service. The question is, how quickly can you get there? And do you have the systems in place to make sure that you are keeping residents safe, that you're being able to do everything in the system that exists? And I would love to hear Tinisch's thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, short answer is no, there is no perfect system, especially as it relates to law enforcement. But I think ideally what any system needs is it needs balance, right? And so one of the big challenges there's many, but for all of them, but one of the big challenges for many systems is that they're trying to do everything, right? So if we don't have an infrastructure, or we haven't really invested in the right response for folks who are having a mental health crisis, or the right or the right service systems, right? The right things in place, then of course, whatever the existing system is going to be overburdened, they're going to be overwhelmed, and they're not going to perform well. And they're not going to be able to address everything that comes across their table. So I think it's less about envisioning the perfect law enforcement system and more about where do we need to be investing in a broader sense around safety. What is it going to take to keep us safe? It's more than just enforcing laws and policies. That's a part of it, right? Making sure that our society has some structure in terms of what we all need, but that has to be equitable. And right now it isn't. And right now, again, there are many folks and many situations that are viewed as part of the problem, as opposed to looking at the root of the problem and then starting there to invest outward, right? In our organization, we have a theory of change called shared safety. And shared safety is not the absence of crime, it's the presence of well-being. So when you're investing into well-being, then you are automatically investing into safety in the long term. Now, I get it that in the moment we have to have some things to respond to, but I'll wrap up by saying this. The people that are closest to the harm are always the closest to the solution. They're the ones that are going to be able to tell you what's happening, why it's happening, and what the appropriate response can be, should be. Whether or not we have the systems or structures in place to do that is a whole nother thing. So what seems to be most effective, what has proven tried and true for generations, is when people are given the resources and the agency within their own communities to be able to address the harms that are happening, that the investment is going into prevention to make sure that those things don't happen in the first place. And that's the direction that I think we need to be going. That's the conversation I think that we're having. Ultimately, when we talk about defunding police, in our organization, we don't work exclusively on police reform. We're looking at the entire criminal justice system, and we're looking at it on an economic level as well, right? Are we getting the return on our investment? If $50 billion a year is going into a system and people are being harmed and there's not appropriate response, and the folks who are responsible for doing this are in many ways creating more harm in our community, something's wrong, right? So this is I think where we need to be going and looking at, like, how are we going to create a safer community that doesn't rely exclusively on law enforcement and penalties.
Thank you, Tish and Courtney. You said you wrap it up by saying this. I think this is the last question that we have. We're running out of time, and I will be respectful for everybody's time. Thank you for being our speaker today. This year, our club is making the homeless crisis in Oakland a priority. To that end, and as our gift to you, for being our speaker for the day, in your honor, we are making a donation to support the unhoused residents of Oakland. Additionally, we would like to give you our Centennial book, which documents 100 years of service and friendship in the third oldest club in the Rotary world. Thank you so much for being our speakers for today. Past President Linda Bosnecker, I believe you have an announcement.
I do, President Ces and fellow Rotarians. It's the holidays, and the Entertainment Committee would like to invite you to our final Cocktails with the President on December 17th, 5:30 to 6:30. We're going to say goodbye to 2020. I don't think anyone's sad to do that. You'll have an opportunity to mingle with your fellow Rotarians and imbibe in a special cocktail that President-elect Dudley Thompson will be sending out instructions on how you might prepare that, or a cocktail of your choice. We're also encouraging everyone to wear some festive attire, whatever that means to you. Could be holiday or just something that is festive, and we'll have prizes for the most festive attire. We wanted to also put out a special invitation to those of you who haven't joined us at a cocktails, and those of you that are newer Rotarians. It's a great opportunity to be in breakout groups and meet some more of your Rotarians. So join us next Thursday evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Rotarian Jason Weiselman. Will you tell us about our speaker next week? Jason, you're never at a loss for words. Do we have you muted, or what's happening? Well, you got it on the schedule. So thank you, Fred, for the thought for today. And thank you, Sean, for our MC and our election of the board and president-elect. Welcome. Thank you, Carrie and Michael and Renea, for lifting our holiday spirits. Thank you, Linda, for reminding us of Cocktails with the President. And thank you, Winter, for introducing our speaker, and Devontae for keeping our Rotaract program going. Finally, a big thank you to Dave, Steve, and M&M Builders and all the donors for our Feed the Hungry program. Thank you so much. Pat, do I have any more bell ringers before I wrap up this meeting?
You do, President Ces. We have, of course, Phil Bennett's for Izzy, and you for Izzy, and Robert Kidd for Steve Nichols. And I know that David read off the names of the different bell ringers for Feed the Hungry, but I think some ones came later. And I know, forgive me if I've missed anybody, but Diane Schaefer came in for one, Cedric Titus, Courtney Ruby, Deborah Barnes. There was Pauline Fox from last week who didn't get into the live oak. That was an omission. And Ces, you did 2 more bell ringers for Feed the Hungry. And of course, there were all the ones that David mentioned earlier.
Thank you so much. So I'd like to end this meeting as usual. And that's the way it went at the 5,320th club meeting on December 10th, 2020 at Oakland Rotary number 3, the third oldest Rotary club in the world. Everyone remember, Rotary opens opportunities for service above self. And for now, this meeting of Rotary of Oakland Club of Oakland is adjourned.